Hi guys, Chrissy here. A little hot from the weather, a little tired of doing dishes, and thinking a lot. I've come to a conclusion. I owe my entire life basically to one person. Dr. Bowles of the Children's Hospital in Columbus, Ohio. Now you're going to say, oh, but you owe me for introducing you to so-and-so, or, oh, what about what I did, or what about what I did? Well, you know something? Next to God, the next person I owe is Dr. Bowles. He gave a kid a chance when everybody else thought I was dead. He got them to do those surgeries on me, and he helped me stay alive. The next person I owe is my dad, Charles Timberlake. He could have let me go from foster care to some kind of home, but he didn't. He took me into his family, into his heart, and I've been his daughter ever since. I owe my mother, Wilma Timberlake, because when she was still, how do you say that the right way? When she was Wilma Matheny, she married my dad, Charles, and taught me a lot of common sense. She taught me how to cook, how to clean, how to take care of myself, how to love other people. She helped me and my brother get along with her whole family, and I owe all of them huge. Mandy, and Tasha, and Chris, and Brandon, and Heath, and Billy, and Sally, and Kevin, and Sherry, and Austin, and Kaya, and Margot, and John, and their 3 boys, Travis, John, and Brian. And I owe my Aunt Dot and my Aunt Blanche a lot, too. And my Uncle Earl, and my Aunt Patty, my Uncle Bud, and all my cousins on my dad's side, and all my cousins and nieces and nephews on my dad's side. I guess you'd say I owe all of my adopted families a huge, huge debt. And then I started to think about the other people in my life I've met. And I thought, you know what? When I was in the 6th grade, I didn't have many friends because I had just moved here from Columbus. And I wasn't exactly the most attractive person. My attitude still sucked a little. And this girl, Lori Griska, only now her name's different because she's been married and had 2 kids. She became my friend at Morrison Elementary. And Brian Jimison and a few other people, you all know who you are, became my friends. And they introduced me to a lot of other people that they knew when we got to the middle school. It's where I met, let's start from the beginning. That's where I met Dana and Benny and Bruce and Willie and Simon and Charlie and Charlie's brother Clyde and Scott and Mark and Aaron and Holly. Oh, Holly. You know, it's funny, but until I met her in middle school, I still didn't have very high self-esteem. I still thought the world owed me something for being born the way I was, and I still thought that I was going to get it no matter what. But Holly taught me that I didn't have to have that attitude, that people would like me just for being me if I was truly nice and meant it. Everybody thought she was a little nerdy. I even thought she was a little nerdy at first. Just like Tirza and the Grubb twins, Tony and Patrick. Let's face it, there were 3 types of people I was friends with in high school. I admit it. There were jocks, weightlifters, like me. There were bookworms, people who hung out in the library and studied till they dropped, like Holly and Tony, and Patrick, to the best of his ability. And then there were people who were just popular, like Miss Edwards' daughter Jennifer and Gretchen Kellner. And there were also people that fit into 2 or 3 of the categories accidentally on purpose, like Tirza. Even though she hit the books all the time, she was popular just being herself. Same way with Gretchen, really, and Jen. And then there were jocks. I mean, weightlifters don't fall into the same classification as basketball, football, baseball. But we were still considered redneck jocks. Now, that's not because we lifted weights. That's because that's who we were. We walked down the hallways in a big group of people. I'd walk out front. My boyfriend at the time, Willie, would be on one side of me, Simon on the other. And then Charlie, Benny, and Bruce. And a line back would be Dana and several of his friends, and so on and so forth. By the time we were done, there were like 16 of us walking down the school hallway at once. Pretty intimidating, right? Not on purpose. We just all liked to be together wherever we went. And we got in a lot of trouble, in school-wise. Not so much out of school, because until I got out of high school, I didn't really hang out with anybody after school until my junior year. That's 10th grade here. And what happened was, I met this boy, Charlie, through my boyfriend at the time, Willie. And Charlie had come from Alexander School District, him and his brothers. And I found out that Charlie liked me a lot, okay? And we started, like, on lunch breaks. We would go down from the high school to his place, which was in the Plains Plaza, and kind of hang out like boys and girls do. Through that experience, I met a boy by the name of Barry Dykeman, Barry Kane, as he goes by, I think. His brother was in an unfortunate accident. Charlie's brother, Clyde, was cleaning a shotgun. And as he was cleaning the shotgun, the chamber wasn't empty, and they thought it was. And he went to open the chamber, and it had jammed, and it went off. It went through 2 doorways at the plaza, right into Barry's older brother's chest. His name was Andy, by the way. I think Andy was probably 15 or 16 when it happened, and he passed away from it. So Charlie and Barry never got along. Not really, anyways, because Barry was always determined that Clyde had done it on purpose, which Clyde did go to jail for it, even though it was an accident. But I'm getting off track. So after high school, I still hung out with some of the same people I did in high school, just finally, at their houses, in the towns they lived, things like that. And then came the day of my 18th birthday. I had, through my friend Lori, that I was telling you about, we were friends from elementary, middle school, high school, all the way through, okay? She had met this boy, Brian, and they were dating. and it didn't quite work out between them. Well, she and my friend Tony introduced me to Brian because Brian was friends with Julie. Julie was this girl that Tony knew from like way back in the day, okay? And Brian was working at Hardee's in the drive-thru as a cashier. And I had just started to work at McDonald's in Nelsonville. Well, so anyway, Brian and I came up with this plan that I was going to come and stay with him until I found another place. Well, after a couple weeks of being there, Brian and I kind of got attracted to each other, and it was decided that I would come live with Brian. So I quit my job at the Nelsonville McDonald's and started working for the pizza place in Athens. No, strike that. I was working for the hair salon in Athens. The understudy before you do your state test for cosmetology, which is what I took in technical school, by the way. Hair cutting, nails, permanents, all that kind of stuff. So we went through that, and one day I came home from work, and Brian wasn't there. It was Valentine's Day, as a matter of fact. This particular section will shed a light on something because I wanted to highlight this little story for somebody who asked me why I can't stand Valentine's Day. Still to this day. I started to make Brian dinner, and at this point, Lori had come to stay with us because something had happened with the new boyfriend she had. We had to take her out of there. She came to stay with me and Brian. Okay. Now, back up to where we were. It's Valentine's Day. I go to make him dinner. Lori's brother, Andy, got married on the same Valentine's Day that this happened. Lori and Brian came back from Andy's wedding, and they were kind of holding hands when they walked in the door, and I didn't think anything of it, really. And I said, "Oh, honey, I'm glad you're home. I made us dinner and all that. Happy Valentine's Day." And he says, "I'm not hungry." But then Lori stuck her head in the fridge and said she just didn't want what we were having. And I said, "Oh," and she goes, "Well, we already ate." I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, I made dinner. What am I supposed to do with it?" And she says, "How about you shove it up your ass?" I said, "What?" And there were events in between that I'm not going to get into, but things happened. They are not the bad guys entirely. I was a bad guy in it too. Other events. If you're really that curious and you get this far in the video, ask me in PM or on Skype sometime, and I'll explain the other events. But anyways, needless to say, Brian and I broke up on Valentine's Day of 2001. 2001. I knew what I was saying. It was February of 2001, February 14th. We broke up, but we came to the agreement that I'd still stay with Brian and Lori until I found a place. Well, then I ran into this guy, Barry, that I was telling you about earlier. And Barry and I asked Brian if we could stay there with them as well. Well, something happened while Brian was at work between Lori and Barry, and I wasn't mad about it because Barry and I weren't serious. He just needed a place to live, liked me, and between you and me, he was really, really good at making girls happy. So Barry and I left Brian's trailer and left Lori there. We moved down to Athens to North Congress. And at the North Congress Apartments, Barry and I started getting closer and closer, and we both lived on the downstairs floor. My apartment was one of them. This kid, I think his name was like Ryan. You'd have to ask Barry. I can never remember names good. Maybe it was Rodney. That's what it was. It was Rodney. He was the old manager of one of the pizza places at the time. But anyways, it was like my room, Rodney's room, then Barry's room on the bottom floor. The second floor was like Dan, 2 other guys, and this chick, Catherine, who took care of the building. And then in the upstairs was old man John, Clay, this other lady that took over for Catherine later, and one more dude, Jerry. There's a long history with Jerry. I'm not going into it right now. Oh, and there was Colonel Chris. He was a little strange. Any rate, this all happened within a matter of maybe 6 months, if that. I met Clay in March. It's a little strange. Trust me, it's strange. I met Clay in March. In May of that year, Barry and I had broke up, and Barry and a friend of mine, Shannon, and her boyfriend at the time, Doug, and Lori, all took off to Cincinnati. Jerry had moved out with his girlfriend, Christy, 6. And I had went to stay with them for a while, hung out with them. Somewhere in between, Barry came back from Cincinnati and was hanging out with me and Jerry and Christy. And then we moved back into the Congress apartments. Barry and I were not a couple at that point, believe you me. And then Jerry moved away. That's why he's still on my Facebook. Love you to death, Jerry. I think it was to Florida him and Christy went. And there was this whole drama with like the people they were renting with, this couple that Jerry and Christy were renting from, and a bunch of other shit. Well, anyway, when it came down to it, Clay and I, in May, decided that we wanted to get married. And it was his birthday month. It was sometime after his birthday that he proposed. And I said I'd love to. And then in August, so June, July is kind of fuzzy because I was really, really drunk and high. I'm not going to lie. And then, let's see, June and July are kind of fuzzy. Well, in August 1st, as a matter of fact, 2001, I got married to Clay Van Branken. And Johnny was part of the deal. Johnny Dyer was. I married Clay. Johnny moved in with us. From the North Congress apartments, we moved to Nelsonville, to Oak Street, where Diane Milliron and her brother Joey and their mother and I think another brother, if I remember properly, and their uncle Denny all came. Like Diane lived next door to us, but they always came over. So to me it was more like Joey and Denny and Diane's mom all lived there. Well, anyway, Clay and I stayed there for quite a while. There was a night incident where Clay got drunk, smashed his head on a tombstone, laid in the cemetery till 6 a.m. the next morning, when him and Johnny were just supposed to go do the laundry. And that ended Nelsonville for us. And we moved from Nelsonville to, where did we move from Nelsonville? Oh, to the Plains. Ha!